On Friday, it was reported all over social media that Joe Rogan had endorsed RFK Jr. on his podcast. And let's first listen to a clip. This is what the supposed endorsement consisted of.
That's just what they do. That's politics. They do it on the left. They do it on the right. They gaslight you. They manipulate you. They promote narratives. And the only one who's not doing that is Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
You a fan?
Yeah, I am a fan. Yeah, he's the only one that makes sense to me. He's the only one that he doesn't attack people. He attacks actions and ideas, but he's much more reasonable and intelligent. I mean, the guy was an environmental attorney and cleaned up the East River. I mean, he's a legitimate guy. You know, before anybody started calling him an anti-vaxxer, which I thought he was too. I thought he was this nut, this like conspiracy theorist nut, until I read his book. I read The Real Anthony Fauci, and I'm like, what is it? How much of this is real? Because if it's all real, this is insane. And we live in a world where we're being manipulated by these health organizations that are being paid by the pharmaceutical drug interests. And these pharmaceutical drug companies are pumping these products out into the population and telling us that we need them, and then making insane amounts of money. And then also the government is in on it, and also they share a patent with Moderna, and also they share profits, and there's $700 million, however much money was made, whatever the number is that these guys made off of these products. Like, this is, all of it is crazy.
Okay, now you may notice something about Rogan's endorsement of RFK Jr., which is that he did not endorse RFK Jr. He said nice things about him. He praised him. That's not the same thing as endorsing him. In fact, what Rogan said about RFK Jr. is no different than what he said about the guy in the past. He said all this same stuff in the past many times. There's no story here. There's nothing new. So Joe Rogan has the same view of RFK Jr. today that he had last week. That's the story. Now, even if Rogan had endorsed him, even if he had said, I am officially endorsing RFK Jr. for president, it still wouldn't be a big deal. I mean, certainly nothing to get upset about. Rogan is free to prefer whatever candidate he wants, endorse whatever candidate he wants. I like Joe, but I'm not voting based on who Joe endorses. And he doesn't expect anyone to vote based on that. In fact, Joe's been very clear when it comes to politics or anything else that he doesn't want his audience to just go blindly believe or follow whatever he says. Like, to his credit, he's always been pretty clear about that. He's just giving his own take on it. This is what I think. You guys should think for yourself. So the whole thing's a non-issue. Not an endorsement, even if it was, like, who cares? Okay. It's Joe Rogan's not a Republican. I mean, that's not, did anyone not know that? But that's not how it was treated by certain segments of the right, especially on Twitter. There was a lot of anger and outrage over this. And in fact, I found out about it because I was, maybe like other people, I saw Joe Rogan trending on Twitter, and I thought, oh, okay, like, what's the left mad about this time, right? What are they complaining about this time with what Joe Rogan said? So I clicked on it, only to find, much to my chagrin, that he was trending this time because people on the right were whining about him because of this. The account Cat Turd, which is an account called Cat Turd, but it does have 2.7 million followers. That account, among others, spent all day attacking Joe. And he posted stuff like this, quote, "So I've never been a Joe Rogan fan, can't stand him. Yes, he has a popular podcast, but I've always thought he was absolutely politically dumb. He's great at figuring things out 2 years after we do. What a legend. So did it surprise me when he endorsed idiot RFK Jr. today? LOL, no. We're talking about the same effing idiot who endorsed Bernie Sanders, right? He's the podcast equivalent of a dumb blonde joke." He also called his podcast gay and low IQ and dumb blonde again. He kept going on and on about the dumb blonde thing, along with a bunch of other insults that seemed to indicate that he's never listened to the podcast. I mean, you could say what you want about Rogan's show, but the guy, I mean, he'll have like a 3.5-hour conversation with an astronomer or an archaeologist. Call that what you want, but low IQ and dumb blonde just don't make any sense. There are probably no dumb blondes listening to Joe Rogan on a regular basis. So if you're going to insult someone, at least try to make sure that your insults bear some relation to your target. Unless he's saying that Joe Rogan himself is a dumb blonde, but Rogan is a 57-year-old bald guy. So I mean, no one's looking at Rogan and saying, oh, look at that dumb blonde. So I'm confused. Maybe it's because I'm a dumb blonde. I don't know. But let's not get hung up on that. Or on this one account that was attacking Rogan. This is just an example. And there were a lot of tweets like that from certain right-wingers who were very, very upset with Joe Rogan and basically swore him off as a moron and a tool because he endorsed RFK Jr., even though he did not endorse RFK Jr. That is what was going on. So I want to say something about this, and I already addressed it on Twitter, but I want to repeat the same point here on the show. And that is, first of all, Joe Rogan is a powerful cultural force, one that is, at a minimum, extremely friendly to conservatives. Countless times over the years, he has platformed, as the left would like to say, right-wing voices, very right-wing voices, okay? People who are far more right-wing than the conservatives who are attacking Joe Rogan now. Right? Like, he's given a platform to people who are much more based than the conservatives that are freaking out at Joe Rogan. He may not consider himself to be a conservative or to be a part of the conservative movement, and that's fine. He's still a net good for the culture and for conservatism. A significant net good. He might not be a conservative, but he's a friend to conservatives. And he's taken conservative positions that were extremely unpopular and pretty risky at the time that he took them. He did that with COVID, for example. He started openly questioning the trans agenda years ago. I mean, he was criticizing the trans agenda before many conservatives were criticizing it. He's been a much more indispensable opponent of trans ideology, a much more effective opponent of trans ideology than like all of the conservatives criticizing him combined. Okay? So here's the point. You don't turn on a guy who's been a huge asset to your movement, a guy who could continue to be a huge asset. And I'm not saying you have to agree with him. I'm not saying you can't criticize him. If you heard what he said about RFK Jr., and you were to come out and say, no, Joe's wrong on this one, okay? I don't agree. RFK Jr. is bad, here's why. That's fine. There's no problem with that. Like, the point is not that you have to automatically agree with everything Rogan says, or that you have to refrain from criticizing him or making any arguments against him. That's not the point. Go ahead and criticize him, absolutely. But to just completely trash the guy, I mean, to throw him to the side, to condemn him totally as nothing but a moron and a phony, et cetera, all because he said one thing you disagree with, is asinine. It is strategically insane. Like, I'm not saying that it's mean and it hurts my feelings. It doesn't. I mean, I'm not the one getting attacked by, I do get attacked by these same people all the time. But in this case, it wasn't me. And I don't think it hurts Joe's feelings. Honestly, I don't think he really cares what these Twitter influencers are saying about him. I'm saying that strategically, it's just a very dumb move. It's stupid and petty and emotional. You're shooting yourself in the foot just to prove a point. And there's way too much of this kind of thing among certain right-wing influencers at the moment. These people they don't understand how to build and maintain an actual movement. They don't know how to wield influence, even though we call them influencers. How to form strategic alliances. And they don't know who we should be forming alliances with. They have no instinct for that at all. In fact, they seem to go really looking to destroy anyone who actually moves the needle. Because the litmus test for these people is just this. Are you currently saying something nice about Donald Trump? And if you're currently saying something nice about him, then you're great. You're a hero. You're our friend. You're our ally. We love you. You're our compatriot. If you aren't, then you're worthless. You're a piece of garbage. You're an idiot. We don't need you. Burn in hell, you sack of shit. That is the attitude. And it's just crazy. It's crazy. Because there are plenty of people in the culture who may not always say nice stuff about Trump and yet could be very helpful to the movement overall. People who might not even like Trump all that much and yet can still be an enormous asset culturally. Meanwhile, there are other people who may love Trump and yet have very little to offer Because loving Trump alone cannot be the only thing that determines who we align ourselves with. Right? Like if an abortion doctor who's currently an abortionist and has no plans in stopping, if they were to stand up and say, I love Trump, are we going to elevate that person and say that this person is our friend now? Like they currently are killing babies because they like Trump? I would hope not. But because of this kind of litmus test, what ends up happening is that you have these influencers who throw someone like Joe Rogan to the side while heaping praise on like some obscure rapper who nobody cares about and nobody likes and has no real fans and has no cultural influence and makes garbage music. But, they shouted MAGA at a concert once or whatever. So it's like you trade in the guy with massive cultural impact for somebody with none, because to you, the only thing that matters is just that one little bit. It's a bad strategy. That's not how you build and maintain a movement. So the right thing to say to someone like Joe Rogan is, hey, you should vote for Donald Trump. I think it's a huge mistake. This is me talking now. I think it's a huge mistake to not vote for Donald Trump. Huge mistake. And we could talk about why. But like the fact that you don't agree on that point, you're not my enemy. Well, I mean, there are people out there who are enemies of our movement. Let's be very clear about that. Who hate our guts, who want us dead. There are evil people who have evil positions and want to do evil things and are doing evil things, and they are enemies. But someone like Joe Rogan isn't. And so there's nothing wrong, again, with saying, hey, you're totally wrong about this. You're way off base. Like, you should be voting for Donald Trump. You don't vote for Donald Trump, you say whatever you want about third parties and whatever, and it's your vote, and you can do what you want with it. Of course, that's true. But in reality, like in the real world, there are only two candidates who matter. RFK Jr. is not going to win. And also, by the way, he's really just a standard leftist for the most part. I mean, he's a standard leftist on most things except when it comes to big pharma. And he's good on big pharma. Give him credit for that. I mean, I think it'd be fantastic if Trump made him head of like HHS or something. Great. Like, I wouldn't mind having RFK Jr. in the cabinet. But there are only two options. It's Kamala, who is it's the communist, or it's Donald Trump. Those are your two options in the real world. And if you don't vote for the non-communist, then you are, in effect, even if you don't mean to, you are in effect supporting the communist. You're helping the communist to gain power. Again, nothing wrong with making that argument. We should make it. But we don't need to, take someone and burn them at the stake as a heretic because of this one point, as important as it is. Hey, YouTube, thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like access to my full show with no ads, you should go to dailywire.com and use promo code Walsh to get 2 months free on all annual plans. See you there.